So, Michael, it's been an amazing 2 months. And I think just as a preface, I'm very thankful to have a great support system. I mean, you and I have known each other for a little while, and we've grown to be friends. And it's amazing to see you on these videos and podcasts, and you surround yourself with great people, but it really starts with family. And I'm extremely thankful to have such a great supporting cast. I will in no doubt tell you that the first couple of weeks of mid-March, I was an absolute mess. Lost my confidence. My family was calling me Dr. Doom. And that wasn't really a part of who I was as a person, but I was so worried about the external factors. What's going to happen? My wife's got to keep working at the courthouse. My brother's down in Miami caring for sick people in the ICU every day. My kids, my mother is in an in-law section with me in my house. She's 75. I got to protect her. I was so worried about those external factors that I completely lost focus of my own confidence, who I was and what I meant to these very same people. And as a leader, you really got to get your mind around that. It's funny, I made a comparison when you're in the airplane and they tell you, hey, when the oxygen masks drop, put them on yourself first, and then make sure you can care for others and get it right. And that kind of resounded with me as I was going through the process. My brother was on me, telling me, get your confidence back. Look what I'm doing down here. You're going to be fine. And your wife's going to be fine, your kids, your mother. Get yourself right. Get your mind around it. And then move forward to make sure you can support the people that you love and care about. And really wasn't limited to my family. Once I got myself right, I was in a much better position to take care of my staff, my clients, my friends, and my family. It was just putting me in that position and getting there that was the hard part. And I do thank my brother for getting me to that point.
Well, you have the luxury of being at home with a wife and 3 kids and mom, and single Dr. Al is down here by himself with no physical contact with anybody. Listen, there's many sides that we can look at this, and familial is always the most important thing, regardless if I'm coming home to someone or not. I always have, you guys to call and rely on. And obviously I have a positive outlook on life no matter what's going on. For me, leadership is multifactorial. I think it starts from within yourself at first, and some of it can be innate. I think we were extremely fortunate growing up. Mom and dad were an incredible couple, a very loving couple. They always worked at their marriage. We got to see that. So they were always involved with one another, and they were always involved in our lives. So I think we just were always surrounded by the concept of love and, of course, leadership in that regard. So there's always the familiar aspect of leadership that is a little bit innate. But I think leadership can also be taught. And there were a lot of things that I learned going through medical school, going through my training, and then really, having this responsibility bestowed on me at a young age. I only was done training after 1 year and working as an attending physician in Miami from 2008 to 2009 when they said, well, you're now going to be the director of the department. And at first I didn't want that. I shied away from it. And before I could leave the meeting, obviously, I became the director of the department. So I learned a lot. I think a lot of leadership is trial and tribulation. It's a lot about people and relationships, being cool and calm and confident and having no ego, because once your ego gets in the way, it's really going to affect, your performance and your ability to lead and direct. I never walk around and say, I'm the chairman or I'm in charge. Anybody who says I'm in charge is not in charge. Though most of the time, just through your actions and your words, people know, who is in charge and, who is leading the charge here anyway. So for me, it's a combination. It's multifactorial when it comes to leadership. Of course, it's familial. Some of it is innate, and I think some of it is taught. And there's no doubt I've taken some lumps over the years in terms of poor communication or reactivity and impulsivity in, discussions with people that would get a little bit heated, but you learn from those discussions. And if you're a part of a team and people always know that you're coming from the right place, they'll always forgive you for when the conversations don't go well. So that's part of been my experience. And I think it's led me to this point where a pandemic arose and the CEO called me in her office. It was just her and I. And she said, what do we need? What medicines do we need to treat this? And I said, the first thing that we have to do is instill calmness and confidence in the entire hospital. It starts with you and I. And then once we have that in place, then everything else will follow.
Yeah. And Alex, Dr. Al.
Sure. Whatever you call me, whatever you want. Don't worry.
Okay. All right. So over the past, let's say 8 weeks, of your experience being a pulmonologist, and it really, I mean, you're on the ground, like being critical care ICU, like what has been this, I guess, have you seen any change, or what has been that change over the past 8 weeks from the time that this first hit to now? Is there a level of just, have people gotten into almost like a rhythm by this point, or is it, is it getting better? Is it getting worse?
Sure. I mean, it was funny. I had a conversation with my brother, and obviously the wars that we've had in the past have been these, foot soldiers going to other countries, dropping bombs. This is a totally different way of looking at things. So there clearly, for me, was an adjustment when things started. I definitely looked at myself as a general and someone who had to speak softly and carry a big stick, so to speak. And for me, the most important thing in the beginning of the process, when we spoke about calmness and confidence, I wanted to make sure that all the troops that were going out into war had the proper gear on. For me, that was the first thing. It's not let's run in the room and start treating people. It's everybody be calm. Let's make sure the masks are on correctly, our shields are on correctly, our heads are covered, we have the gown on. So that was the first thing for me, was that people, I think, weren't mentally adjusting to the change that had happened. And to be honest with you, I think it took all of us, whether you're in the medical profession or not. This had been going on for months in other parts of the world, and we just were kind of having a good time. And we really didn't know the severity of what we were up against. So I think once the initial hit came, for sure, the first week, I was trying to adjust to what is really happening. And to kind of backtrack what you said, I was an attending physician during the swine flu, and we did not have this type of either social distancing or even awareness of how severe these flus can become. If you look at the numbers and, you can see the swine flu infected, up to 100 million Americans, over a 1-year time period. That's pretty severe. And we can get into death rates and all those things. I don't think that's, what we're looking at here. But it definitely affected a lot of people. I definitely had young patients that passed away, from that disease. And it was a startling revelation. What happened over the next decade in terms of why we were not prepared for this, I don't know. It's not anything that I even thought about over the last decade, probably until, I started to literally see patients with this and say, wow, life is completely different now. And I have no idea when it's going to be the same again. I think everyone adjusted in the hospital. The cases really started to peak for us in Miami at the end of March. I had already been in contact with, my entire team that trained me in New York, and they were completely ravaged by mid-March. It was sad to hear that, 500 patients, all with coronavirus, were littered all over the hospital, half of them on life support. So we knew the severity at that point of what was going on, not only by treating, but hearing, what the carnage was in other parts of the country and obviously the world. The nurses and all medical staff did an amazing job of mentally adjusting to the situation. Everybody was calm. By the second week had come around, we had given each other some confidence. Everyone at that point became a leader. There were times where a nurse would grab me and say, oh my God, your cap is off. What are you doing? So I think leadership can absolutely become infectious. So it's not just within me to be the leader. It's all of us to become leaders in a situation like this. And I think we've all leaned on each other at a certain point, whether I would have, I mean, there were 2 weeks I would call my brother every night on FaceTime, every night. And I would tell him, I guess my war stories for the day. So I definitely had that love and support, and I had his leadership. So
it's actually, I wanted to ask you guys about that because, how is that in a way, like the joint perspective been of being able to speak to one another? Alex, you being, in the hospital, Lawrence, like you essentially on the legal side, interfacing with clients, probably on the civilian side, I call it civilians. But just between the two of you of having those nightly calls with what you were experiencing in your life, and then kind of the interplay between the two perspectives.
Yeah,
That's a great question, Mike. I was really thinking about that as Alex was giving his last answer. I think first it starts when you're brothers in the good times, bad times, challenging times. We're not spring chickens, and we've been through a lot in our lives. Really starting when we grew up in New Jersey, and we've evolved. Here we are today. We're both in two separate and distinct professions, but the interesting link is they're both learned professions. I get a lot of questions. Oh, your mother must be proud. She's got an attorney and a lawyer, and we get a lot of that. And our parents, really, my mother and father, deserve a lot of the credit just for putting us in this path so that we could enjoy these opportunities. And don't get me wrong, we worked hard to get here, but we're very thankful, I'm sure Alex would agree, for all the sacrifices that our parents made, and even our parents, their parents before them made. We talked about being both, we're looking at how many generations now. All four of our grandparents immigrated from Italy. And I know you have a similar story in terms of, immigration, and we're all just a kid from somewhere. We have a great story, but it's evolved to the point now where we're both in this separate learned professions, and we really feed off each other based on our experience. I'm in the legal profession, Alex in the medical. When I watched him in the beginning of this health crisis, it really gave me confidence to go about my daily life, not only with my personal relationships, but looking at what I could do with the firm. I got confidence saying, if my brother's down there in Miami, every day, every minute, really sacrificing himself, his time for the betterment of others, I can do this for my law firm and my clients, for my staff. Really gave me a great amount of confidence. And that's just a microcosm of how our life has been, feeding off each other. Whether we're kids playing sports, being really competitive, feeding off each other, trying to make each other the best baseball player we could.
Right.
Obviously, I was the better fielder. He might have been the better hitter. Okay. But those type of competitions as siblings drives you throughout your life. And this was just another example. Alex made me a better person and a better lawyer throughout this process. And I'm thankful for that. And we did have various calls almost every night that would be extremely draining to me. I would put on a brave face for him and tell him, you're doing your best. Keep up the good work. You're on the front line. You're my little brother. You're doing a great job.
Call me again.
But then I'd put my head on the pillow and pray, stay up all night, kicking, thinking about what he was going through. And that's part of being a sibling, but it's really part of being a good team player. You don't have to be brothers to support one another, especially at a time like now. I think that also, if I could pivot that to figuring out what my brother's needs were every night, then thinking about what my clients' needs were. Sometimes it just took picking up the phone to talk to a client and letting them know, hey, it's going to be okay. I had one client, it was very difficult, almost every week would pick up the phone and scream at me, we're not doing everything we can do. We got to go 110%. And I would be there to reassure them, sometimes with belligerence and back and forth. And this is just sometimes what lawyers have to go through to get their clients, on the right path mentally and thinking about what's next. I had one client, great discussion where he really just came off the ledge, and we had almost an hour conversation about what his needs were relating to the short term and the long term, given the fact that he was in his 70s. He was a cancer survivor. He actually had a heart claim. So this was an opportunity for me to really understand what that person's needs were And I was thankful that that person entrusted me with that type of relationship. And it really started with looking at how my brother dealt with his circumstances, instilling that type of confidence, and then pivoting, making sure I could provide that to my clients, my family, my friends, and my staff as well.
Excellent, Lawrence. And as we close this out, Alex, have you gained any perspective or support from Lawrence? Because it sounds like he's gained a lot from you. Like I said, you're probably thinking, man, what I'm experiencing,
like sometimes when you put people's feet to the fire, and I think probably what I was doing looking back on it, because I mean, I'm having draining days at the hospital. It's like, who am I going to rely on? Who I need to talk to somebody. Who am I going to talk to? I think I put Lawrence's feet to the fire a little bit, and I think he was pumped up to talk to me after 2 or 3 nights. He didn't shy away from questions, and obviously in the beginning it was not as humorous, and then as the days went on, we at least started to at least have some humor, and I think humor is important. I mean, I am a stand-up comedian, and I'm on stage almost every week. Obviously not now, but I think there is, when you have a little bit of humor, I think it adds to your leadership qualities. It's like, can you lighten the mood a little bit, to really get somebody to focus? So Lawrence became and always was a leader for me. It's my older brother. I mean, it's always going to, be Superman for me. So I could tell in the beginning that he was uncomfortable a little bit with the conversations. But I think if you just continue to have some dialogue with someone, you'll always find that way to connect. And no doubt he gave me 100% confidence to continue to go to the hospital, to have strength, to not tire out, to get my rest, to eat good, and to be myself. And sometimes you can lose yourself a little bit, when you're in the moment going through these crises. It's nice to look back and say, wow, my brother did an amazing job of loving and nurturing me and giving me confidence. So he's a leader. Don't let him trick you into anything else. My brother's a leader. He wasn't scared of anything.
I will say this, Mike, it's interesting, but we mentioned, and you've done a wonderful job providing content to really instill confidence in attorneys. And I've been blessed to be part of one of your groups with just tremendous growth-minded individuals. And it is extremely helpful to be surrounded by individuals who have that mindset that this is not only a challenge, but a growth opportunity. And I know we've heard that a lot, but it's very important. And thinking about where I am now, Alex referenced the fact that you really are in a good spot to provide love and passion to those in front of you right now. I don't hear a lot of firms saying, hey, this is what I'm giving to my clients. And I use the word love in that format where it's about support. It's about being passionate about what you do. I think this time has really rekindled that. It's made me understand that I'm back in love with what I do and this profession. And I've seen that a lot from other attorneys. Obviously, you're seeing it from doctors and nurses. Everyone on the front line doesn't even have to be, we're talking about professionals. You're talking about people delivering packages. I come in here every day, or when I'm in the office, and there's nobody in here right now, hasn't been for 2 months, but when I see my mail delivery person through the glass and I wave at her and I give her a thumbs up and just I really want to hug her. I mean, Mike, I'm a hugger. We've been together, and that's the type of personality I have. This has been hurtful to me not to be able to really get out there and be physical and affectionate, but there are still ways to do that. And not a lot of firms are out there in their Instagram posts or their podcasts talking about love, but it really is an important factor right now for your family, like my brother, your friends, and your clients, your staff, and everyone that you're around.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you guys.